The end of my world didn't come with a bang, it came with a whisper. Lying next to the woman I had loved for 22 years, I heard 6 words that shattered everything I thought was real. In that single, heart-stopping moment, the life I'd built became a house of cards in a hurricane. My first instinct was a tidal wave of pure, white-hot rage that threatened to consume me whole. But then something else took over, a cold, calculating calm I never knew I possessed. This isn't just a story about a cheating wife. It's about what happens when a good man is pushed past his breaking point and decides to stop playing by the rules. What I uncovered next changed everything, not just about her, but about myself. You think you know how this ends, think again. Before diving in, hit that subscribe button and comment below. Have you ever dealt with betrayal? Let's hear your stories. Part 1, The Hum of a Lie. Life, for the most part, had settled into a comfortable rhythm, the kind you don't really notice until it's gone. At 48, I was Mark, a project manager in a mid-level tech firm, a husband, a father of 2. My life was a blueprint of American suburbia, a 2-story colonial in a decent neighborhood, a mortgage that was more of a roommate than a liability, and a lawn I mowed every Saturday with religious fervor. My wife, Sarah, was the vibrant color in my grayscale world, or so I believed. Our marriage had been a 22-year journey. We'd weathered the storms of raising kids. Our daughter, Emily, was now a sophomore in college, and our son, Josh, was navigating the treacherous waters of his senior year of high school. We'd navigated financial scares, health crises, and the general, grinding erosion of time. I thought we'd made it. I'd chosen this path, this steady, predictable job over a riskier startup venture years ago precisely for this reason: stability. I had provided, I had been present, I thought that was enough. Lately, though, a subtle dissonance had crept into our domestic harmony. It wasn't a loud, clanging alarm, but a low, almost imperceptible hum, the kind you only hear in the dead of night when everything else is silent. Sarah, who had dedicated 2 decades to raising our children, had recently taken a part-time job as a curator's assistant at a trendy downtown art gallery. I was proud of her. She deserved a world beyond PTA meetings and carpool schedules. But the job changed things. She started dressing differently, swapping her comfortable jeans and sweaters for chic, tailored outfits that looked like they belonged in a magazine. Her phone, once a tool for coordinating family logistics, was now an extension of her hand, buzzing and chiming with a life that was entirely separate from mine. She'd angle the screen away when I walked into the room, a gesture so small, so insignificant that to question it would have made me feel like a paranoid fool. "Just gallery stuff," she'd say with an easy smile. "You know how artists are." So dramatic, then came the evening workshops and late-night inventory sessions. They started cropping up once, then twice a week. I'd be home, heating up leftover lasagna, while she was out nurturing her newfound passion. I'd feel a flicker of resentment, the lonely man's lament, but I'd quickly snuff it out with guilt. I was supposed to be supportive. This was her time to shine. I'd even joke about it with my buddies over our weekly poker game. Sarah got a whole new life, I'd say, trying for a light, self-deprecating tone. "I'm starting to think my most exciting feature is my 401k. They'd laugh, clap me on the back, and tell me I was a lucky man, and I believed it. I ignored the way she'd stopped asking about my day, her questions becoming perfunctory, her attention already drifting back to the glowing screen in her palm. I overlooked the faint, unfamiliar scent of a men's cologne that clung to her scarf one evening, dismissing it as something picked up in the crowded gallery. I was a frog in a pot of slowly warming water, oblivious to the fact that I was being boiled alive. I loved my wife, and love, I've learned, is the most powerful anesthetic of all. It numbs you to the truth, even when it's humming right in your ear. Part 2, The Whisper in the Dark. The inciting incident, the moment the hum became a deafening roar, happened on a Tuesday. It was a day like any other, which is the cruelest trick life plays on you. Betrayal doesn't announce itself with thunder and lightning. It slides into your life on a perfectly ordinary, forgettable weekday. I'd come home early from work, a rare gift from a project that had finally, mercifully, gone live. I was bone-tired but buoyed by a sense of accomplishment. I pictured a quiet evening with Sarah, maybe opening that bottle of wine we'd been saving, reconnecting in the stillness of a house that was often too loud with the teenage energy of our son. But the house was empty. A hastily scrawled note on the counter read, "Late inventory at the gallery, don't wait up, leftovers in the fridge." Love, S. Disappointment settled in my gut, a familiar leaden weight. I ate alone, watched some mind-numbing TV, and headed to bed around 11. I was drifting in that hazy space between wakefulness and sleep when I heard the front door click open and shut. A few minutes later, the mattress dipped as Sarah slid into bed beside me. She was careful not to jostle me, her movements practiced and quiet. I kept my breathing even, my eyes shut, feigning a deep sleep I was now miles away from. The scent of her, a mix of her usual lavender soap and the crisp, cold night air, filled the space between us. Then I heard it, a soft vibration from her side of the bed, her phone. She shifted, turning away from me, and I heard the faint tap-tap of her thumbs on the screen. A moment later, the phone buzzed again, this time with an incoming call. She answered it in a hushed tone, her voice barely audible. I strained to hear, my entire body rigid. My heart began a frantic, painful thudding against my ribs. "You can't call me this late," she whispered, her voice a cocktail of annoyance and affection. A pause. I could hear the faint, tinny murmur of a man's voice on the other end. "I know, I miss you too, it was amazing." Another pause, my blood ran cold. Then came the words that would forever be seared into my memory, the 6 words that detonated my life. "Don't worry," she whispered, a soft, conspiratorial laugh in her throat. "He has no idea." The universe tilted. The air in my lungs turned to poison. In that instant, every strange glance, every late night, every angled phone screen clicked into place, forming a hideous mosaic of deceit. Lying there, pretending to be asleep just inches from the woman who was my entire world, I had never felt more awake or more alone. She ended the call a moment later, placed the phone back on her nightstand, and sighed, a sound of contentment that was a dagger in my soul. She snuggled closer, her back against mine, seeking the warmth and security of the man she was so casually, so callously betraying. I didn't flinch, I didn't move a muscle. I just lay there in the dark, my eyes wide open, as the ghost of my marriage hovered over me. Part 3, a ghost in my own home. The next few days were a masterclass in dissociation. I moved through my life like a specter, haunting the rooms of my own house. I went to work, sat in meetings, discussed deadlines and deliverables, all while a silent scream echoed in the chambers of my mind. My body was on autopilot, performing the mundane rituals of a life that no longer felt like my own. I was a ghost at my own breakfast table, watching my wife, my cheating wife, butter her toast and talk about the weather as if the ground beneath our feet hadn't just split wide open. Every interaction was poison. Her morning kiss felt like the brand of a hot iron on my cheek. Her casual "I love you" as she left for the gallery was a shard of glass in my ear. I'd watch her tap away on her phone and imagine her lover on the other end, sharing jokes, intimacies, a whole world I wasn't privy to. The rage was a physical thing, a feral beast clawing at the inside of my ribs, demanding to be let out. I wanted to smash things, I wanted to scream at her, to grab her by the shoulders and shake the truth out of her. But a colder, more patient part of me held me back. What would happen if I did? There would be a scene, tears, denials. She'd twist it, make me the villain. I could already hear her words. "You're imagining things, you're just stressed from work. How could you accuse me of that?" I couldn't give her that power, not yet. So I played the part of the oblivious husband, the good, dependable Mark, and in my silence I became an observer, a detective in the ruins of my own marriage. My memory, spurred by the venom of betrayal, became razor-sharp. I started replaying the last 6 months, and the evidence was everywhere. There were the credit card statements with charges from restaurants I'd never been to, listed as business lunches. There was the new, expensive lingerie she'd bought, pieces I had never seen her wear for me. I'd find it tucked away at the bottom of her drawer, the tags still on, and a wave of nausea would wash over me. Was she wearing it for him? The thought was a visceral punch, knocking the wind out of me, leaving me gasping for air in the quiet of our bedroom. The nights were the worst. I'd lie next to her, feigning sleep, my senses on high alert. I'd listen to the rhythm of her breathing, wondering if she was dreaming of him. I'd remember the early days of our relationship, the raw, unbridled passion we had for each other. I recalled a weekend trip to a cabin in the mountains years ago, before the kids, before the mortgage. We'd spent 2 days tangled in the sheets, fueled by cheap wine and the intoxicating belief that our love was invincible. The memory, once a source of warmth, was now tainted, a cruel reminder of what I had lost. That passion felt like it belonged to another lifetime, to two different people. Now, lying next to her, the only thing I felt was a desolate Arctic cold. My home had become a stage, and I was playing a role I hadn't auditioned for, the fool. Part 4, The Art of Deception. The time for passive observation was over. The ghost in my house needed to start gathering evidence. My grief was slowly but surely calcifying into a cold, hard resolve. I needed proof. I needed to know who this man was. I needed to understand the scope of the wreckage. My chance came on a Saturday morning. Sarah announced she was going to a yoga class, a new addition to her routine. "It's this amazing hot yoga place," she said, pulling her hair into a ponytail. "It totally clears my head." I watched her leave, the lie hanging in the air between us, as thick and cloying as her new, expensive perfume. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, I went into action. I knew her phone passcode, our anniversary, the irony of which was a bitter pill. My hands trembled as I picked up her phone from the nightstand where she'd left it to charge. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of dread and adrenaline. I went straight to her texts, and there it was, a thread with a contact named Julian. No last name, just Julian. The messages went back months. They were a sickening tapestry of their affair, woven with flirty banter, explicit plans, and declarations of feelings that made my stomach churn. "Julian, can't stop thinking about last night. You're intoxicating." "Sarah, you're the intoxicating one." I felt alive for the first time in years. "Julian, when can I see you again? I need more." "Sarah, soon. I'll make an excuse. Mark is so wrapped up in his work, he never suspects a thing." That last message felt like a physical blow. He never suspects a thing. The casual cruelty of it, the dismissal of me as a dull, oblivious obstacle in her grand romance. I scrolled further, my thumb moving mechanically, absorbing every poisonous word. They had nicknames for me. The Warden, Mr. Predictable. They laughed at my schedule, my clothes, my loyalty. I methodically took pictures of the entire thread with my own phone. Every screenshot was a nail in the coffin of my marriage. Julian, I gathered, was an artist she'd met at the gallery. He was younger, of course. His profile picture on their messaging app showed a man in his mid-30s with intense eyes, a scruffy beard, and an air of artistic arrogance. He was everything I wasn't, a free spirit, unburdened by mortgages and college tuition payments. He was an escape. That evening, I decided to test the waters. As we sat across from each other at the dinner table, the silence punctuated by the clinking of our forks, I brought him up. "So, who's the new hotshot artist at the gallery?" I asked, my tone carefully neutral. "I saw a flyer for an upcoming exhibition, Julian something." Sarah's eyes flickered, a micro-expression of panic that she masked in a heartbeat. She took a slow sip of her wine before answering, her composure a fortress. "Oh, Julian Croft," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "He's incredibly talented, a bit of a prodigy really. We're all very excited about his show. You seem to be spending a lot of time with him." Late nights, business lunches. I let the sentence hang in the air. This was her moment, a chance to confess, to show a sliver of remorse. Instead, she put down her fork and fixed me with a look of disappointed pity. "Mark, what are you implying?" she asked, her voice laced with indignation. "He's a gallery artist. It's my job to work with him. You're being paranoid. Is everything okay at work? You seem so stressed lately." The gaslighting was masterful. In the space of 30 seconds, she had flipped the script, painting me as the unstable, suspicious husband and her as the patient, long-suffering wife. It was then I knew for certain that the woman I married was gone. In her place was a stranger, a brilliant actress who had perfected the art of deception. And as I looked into her cold, defiant eyes, my last vestiges of hope for reconciliation died. The beast in my chest stopped clawing. It grew quiet, patient, and started to think. Part 5, Forging an Alliance. I couldn't carry this burden alone anymore. The weight of the secrets, the constant performance of normalcy, was crushing me. There was only one person I could trust completely, one person who would see through the emotional chaos and offer a clear, unvarnished perspective. My younger sister, Chloe. Chloe was a divorce attorney. To say she was sharp is an understatement. She had a mind like a steel trap and a bullshit detector that was second to none. She was pragmatic to a fault, but beneath her tough-as-nails exterior was a fierce, unwavering loyalty to her family. I called her on a Sunday afternoon, my voice cracking as I asked if I could come over. She heard the tremor in my voice and simply said, "I'll put the coffee on." Sitting in her sleek, minimalist living room, the whole sordid story came pouring out of me. I told her about the whisper in the dark, the text messages, the gaslighting. I showed her the screenshots I had taken, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone steady. She listened without interruption, her expression hardening with every detail. When I finished, she didn't offer platitudes or empty reassurances. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on mine, and said with chilling calm, "The bitch." It was the first time I had laughed in what felt like an eternity, a raw, humorless bark of a laugh, but it broke the tension. "Okay, Mark," she said, switching into professional mode. "Grieving time is over. From this moment on, we are not emotional, we are strategic. You're not a husband anymore, you're a client, my favorite client." A strange sense of relief washed over me. I wasn't just a victim anymore, I had an ally, a general. "First things first," Chloe continued, already pacing in front of her fireplace. "We don't get mad, we get everything. You will not confront her. You will not let on that you know anything. You are going to continue being Mr. Predictable, the oblivious husband. It's the greatest advantage we have." She laid out a plan with methodical precision. I was to quietly make copies of all our financial documents, bank statements, investment portfolios, tax returns, credit card bills. I was to document every late night, every suspicious expense. She advised me to open a new bank account in my name only and start diverting a portion of my paycheck into it. "She has shown you who she is, Mark. Believe her," Chloe said, her voice firm. "This isn't just about a broken heart anymore. This is about protecting your future, protecting the assets you've spent 25 years building." Following her instructions gave me a sense of purpose, a mission to focus on beyond the roaring pain in my chest. I became a spy in my own home. I rifled through filing cabinets, downloaded statements online, and created a secret, password-protected folder on my work computer that I labeled Project Nightingale. It was a small, dark piece of irony that only I would understand. Every piece of paper I copied, every date I logged in a hidden spreadsheet, was a step towards taking back control. The victim was being replaced by the strategist. And in that transformation, I discovered a part of myself I never knew existed, a man who was cold, calculating, and patient, a man who was learning to wait for the perfect moment to strike. Part 6, a blank canvas. My life was now a dual existence. To the world, and especially to Sarah, I was the same old Mark. I went to work, I mowed the lawn, I asked about her day with a manufactured interest that deserved an Academy Award. But beneath that placid surface, a different man was operating. I was a hunter, and my prey was the truth. Chloe's advice was my gospel: document everything, so I did. I started paying closer attention, and the evidence was piling up at an alarming rate. One evening, Sarah told me she was going to a late-night curator's dinner to woo a potential donor for the gallery. I wished her a good time, kissed her cheek, and watched her drive away. 20 minutes later, I was in my own car, parked down the street from a trendy Italian restaurant she had mentioned weeks ago in passing. It was a cliché, a scene straight out of a bad movie, but the pain was devastatingly real. There they were at a secluded corner table, bathed in the soft glow of candlelight, Julian and Sarah. She was laughing, her head thrown back, a look of pure adoration on her face as he spoke. He reached across the table and took her hand. It was an act of such casual intimacy that it felt more profound, more damaging than a kiss. I didn't storm in, I didn't make a scene. I just sat there in the dark, the engine off, and watched. I took a picture with my phone, the long-range zoom distorting the image just enough to make it look like a painting, a portrait of betrayal. The pain was still there, a hot, searing agony, but it was now mixed with an icy resolve. This was no longer just an affair, it was a performance, and I was now the director. My investigation led me online. It was shockingly easy. Julian Croft had a public artist profile on social media, filled with brooding photos of him in his studio, surrounded by his art, chaotic splashes of paint on oversized canvases. But it was his private friend's only account that yielded gold. A friend of Chloe's, a tech-savvy paralegal, managed to get access. It was a digital diary of their affair. Pictures of them on day trips to quaint little towns I thought Sarah was visiting for art buying. A photo of Sarah's hand, our wedding ring conspicuously absent, holding a glass of wine with the caption, "My Muse." I screenshotted everything, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. Each click was a confirmation of my stupidity, of my willful blindness. There was a darkly comic aspect to it all, the sheer, unadulterated cliché of it. The restless suburban wife, the passionate young artist, the oblivious, hardworking husband, we were all playing our parts perfectly. In my notes for Project Nightingale, I started adding my own witty asides, a form of gallows humor to keep myself sane. Note: suspect claims to be at yoga. Actual location: a wine bar with a man who looks like he hasn't showered in a week. The downward dog he's interested in is not a yoga pose. It was a pathetic coping mechanism, but it was mine. Part 7: The curator of my own demise. Just when I thought the betrayal couldn't cut any deeper, I discovered its true, devastating scope. It wasn't just about sex and whispered sweet nothings in the dark. It was about money, our money. My money. Following Chloe's advice, I had been meticulously combing through our joint finances. That's when I found it, a series of transactions that made no sense. Over the past 4 months, Sarah had made 3 separate withdrawals from our joint savings account, totaling a staggering $50,000. The descriptions were vague: investment, art acquisition. My blood turned to ice. This was the money we had earmarked for Josh's final year of college, a safety net we had spent years building. When I cross-referenced the dates of the withdrawals with her calendar, a sick pattern emerged. Each transaction corresponded with a major milestone for Julian Croft: the rental of his new, spacious art studio, the purchase of high-end supplies, the initial deposit for booking the prestigious gallery space for his upcoming solo exhibit. She wasn't just his lover, she was his patron. She was curating his career using our family's future as her checkbook. The sheer audacity of it, the gall, was breathtaking. The betrayal had moved beyond the personal and into the financial, a violation that felt somehow colder, more calculated. She wasn't just cheating on me, she was stealing from our children. The rage that had been simmering for weeks finally boiled over, but it was a cold, silent rage. There was no shouting, no breaking things, just a terrifying, crystalline clarity. This was the final piece of the puzzle. Julian wasn't just some charming artist who had seduced my wife, he was a grifter. And my wife, my brilliant, beautiful wife, was his willing accomplice, bankrolling her own fantasy at our family's expense. I felt a strange, chilling sense of calm descend upon me. The emotional turmoil, the heartbreak, the self-doubt, it all evaporated, replaced by a singular, unyielding purpose. This was no longer just about exposing an affair. It was about dismantling a con. Sarah had curated the narrative of her affair, painting me as the boring, oblivious husband. Now it was my turn to be the curator. I was going to curate her demise. And the opening night of Julian's big exhibition would be my masterpiece. Part 8: The Exhibition. The night of Julian Croft's solo exhibition, Urban Decay, was a chilly autumn evening. The gallery was buzzing, a hive of chic, black-clad art lovers sipping champagne and murmuring pretentious critiques of the canvases that hung on the stark white walls. The paintings were, to my untrained eye, a mess of angry, chaotic colors splattered across huge canvases. To me, they just looked like a paint factory had exploded. Sarah was in her element. She wore a stunning, form-fitting black dress that I had never seen before, her hair swept up in an elegant style. She moved through the crowd with a radiant confidence, a queen in her court, accepting compliments on her discovery. She was glowing, energized by the web of lies she had so expertly spun. She was the proud patroness, the woman with the discerning eye who had plucked this genius from obscurity. When I walked in, her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. She hadn't expected me. I had told her I was bogged down with a work emergency. "Mark," she exclaimed, recovering quickly and gliding over to me. "What a surprise, I thought you were stuck at the office." "The project wrapped up early," I said, my voice even and calm. I kissed her on the cheek, the gesture feeling alien and theatrical. "I wouldn't miss your big night, I'm proud of you." The lie tasted like ash in my mouth, but her face lit up, any suspicion erased by her own ego. "I'm so glad you're here," she said, squeezing my arm. "Come, I want you to meet Julian." Julian Croft was exactly as I had pictured him. Tall, dressed in a ridiculously expensive but artfully distressed linen suit, a smug smirk playing on his lips. He oozed a self-satisfied charm that set my teeth on edge. "So you're the man behind the woman of the hour," he said, shaking my hand. His grip was soft, his eyes dismissive. He saw me exactly as they had described me in their texts, the boring, predictable provider, the warden. "Something like that," I replied with a tight smile. "Congratulations on the show, it's very colorful." My sister, Chloe, arrived a few minutes later, looking sharp and formidable in a tailored pantsuit. She was my rock, her presence a silent promise of the reckoning to come. She gave me a subtle nod, and we began to play our parts, mingling with the guests, which included some of our oldest friends and, crucially, Sarah's parents. I made small talk, I admired the art, I sipped the cheap champagne, all the while feeling a coiled, powerful stillness inside me. I was a bomb, ticking down to zero in a room full of people who had no idea the explosion was coming. The stage was set, the audience was assembled, all that was left was the final act. Part 9, a private viewing. As the evening reached its peak, I saw my moment. Julian was holding court by his largest, most obnoxious painting, regaling a captivated audience with a story about his process. Sarah stood beside him, her hand resting proprietorially on his arm. Her parents were nearby, beaming with pride at their daughter's professional success. I approached them calmly. "Sarah, Julian," I said, my voice low but firm. "Could I borrow you both for a moment? There's a potential buyer I'd like you to meet in the gallery office. He's a bit private." The bait was too tempting for them to resist. A private, wealthy buyer, that was the dream. Sarah gave me a grateful, almost loving look. "Of course, honey, lead the way." I led them down a short hallway to the small, glass-walled office at the back of the gallery. Chloe was already there, standing by the large oak desk. She closed the door behind Julian and Sarah, the click of the latch echoing in the sudden, tense silence. The smiles on their faces evaporated, replaced by confusion. "Mark, what is this?" Sarah asked, a nervous edge to her voice. "Where's the buyer?" "He's right here," I said, looking her directly in the eye. "It's me, and I'm afraid I won't be buying any of this garbage." I reached into my briefcase, which I had placed on the desk earlier, and pulled out a thick manila folder. I opened it and began to lay out its contents on the polished wood, one by one, like a poker player revealing a royal flush. First, the printouts of the text messages, hundreds of them. I watched Sarah's face drain of all color as she recognized her own words. Julian's arrogant smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of pure panic. Next, the glossy photos. The two of them at the Italian restaurant, holding hands, the pictures from his private social media page. The one of her hand, sans wedding ring, captioned my muse. "A beautiful sentiment," I said, my voice dripping with ice. "But I believe the term you're looking for is financier." That's when I laid down the final, devastating cards, the copies of our bank statements with the three $50,000 withdrawals circled in red. Beside them, I placed the bank records for Julian's studio rental, his supply invoices, and the gallery booking contract. All neatly aligned, the dates and amounts matching perfectly. $50,000, Sarah," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Our son's college fund, our safety net. You didn't just have an affair, you committed theft. You stole from your own family to fund this fraud." Julian began to stammer. "Now, wait a minute, this is a misunderstanding." "No," Chloe cut in, her voice like a whip crack. "There is no misunderstanding. This is fraud, pure and simple. We have enough evidence here to not only sue you into oblivion, but to press criminal charges." Sarah finally found her voice, a strangled, desperate whisper. "Mark, please, we can talk about this. Don't do this here." "Here you mean at the monument to your betrayal that you built with my money." I laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "The performance is over, Sarah. I saw it all. I heard it all. Starting with that little whisper in the dark when you told him not to worry because your idiot husband had no idea." Her face crumpled. The confident, radiant curator was gone, replaced by a terrified, exposed woman. Julian, seeing his patron and her money about to go up in smoke, looked like a cornered rat. The masterpiece was complete. Not the garbage on the walls outside, but this raw, ugly, beautiful portrait of truth I had just painted for them in the quiet of this office. There was no shouting, no grand, public humiliation. Just the cold, undeniable evidence in the devastating silence that followed. Part 10, The Art of Letting Go. Chloe filed the divorce papers the very next morning. The fallout was swift and brutal. I told Sarah's parents everything, showing them the same evidence I had shown her. They were horrified, their pride in their daughter turning to shame and disappointment. The news ripped through our social circle like a shockwave. Julian Croft, exposed as a con artist who used a married woman's family savings to launch his career, became a pariah in the local art scene. The gallery terminated Sarah's contract. The exhibition was a catastrophic failure. He vanished from town within a week. The divorce was surprisingly clean. Faced with the mountain of evidence of financial infidelity, Sarah and her lawyer had no leverage. Chloe was magnificent, ensuring I kept the house and the majority of our assets. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it to protect my children's future, the one she had been so willing to gamble away. But this story isn't about winning. There is no victory in the demolition of a life you spent decades building. The true challenge came in the quiet aftermath, in the echoing silence of a house where a family used to live. For the first few months, I was adrift. I had spent so long being a husband and a father that I had forgotten how to just be Mark. The first step was quitting my job. The stable, predictable career I had clung to for the sake of my family now felt like a cage. I took a portion of the settlement and did something I had always dreamed of. I bought a ridiculously overpowered motorcycle and spent 2 months driving across the country. I saw mountains and deserts, canyons and coastlines. I spoke to strangers in roadside diners and slept in cheap motels. And somewhere on a lonely highway in Utah, with nothing but the roar of the engine and the vast, open sky, I finally let her go. I forgave her, not for her sake, but for mine. Holding on to that anger was like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. When I returned, I was different. The weight I had been carrying for years was gone. I reconnected with my kids, not as a weekend dad or a walking ATM, but as a person. I talked to them honestly about my mistakes, about my own complacency in the marriage's slow decay. Our relationships deepened, rebuilt on a foundation of honesty instead of obligation. I didn't seek revenge in the traditional sense. My revenge was my own rebirth. It was rediscovering my passions. It was starting a small consulting business from my home, on my own terms. It was learning to cook something other than scrambled eggs. It was finding joy in the simple, quiet moments of a life I was building for myself. My revenge was living well, and for the first time in a very long time, I was truly living. The canvas of my life, which I thought had been ruined, was simply blank, and I was finally ready to start painting again. If this story hit home, like and subscribe for more gripping tales of love and betrayal. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you forgive or seek revenge? Your stories and perspectives are what make this community thrive. And make sure you check out the next video popping up now for another twist-filled saga. You won't want to miss it.